Greetings. Welcome to our quick and dirty Star Trek Discovery Season 2 mid-season review. Before we get into this, be warned, there are spoilers ahead. Like, all the spoilers. Time spoilers, even.
I like that.
Oh, everything sounds cooler when you put time in front of it.
Oh, getting readings off the rift. Time rift.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire!
The season starts with the arrival of the USS Enterprise, which has been conveniently and catastrophically damaged. Captain Christopher Pike takes command of Discovery in order to finish an urgent mission to investigate 7 mysterious signals. Only one of those 7 signals remains, and when Discovery goes to investigate that last signal, it vanishes. But they do find a crashed USS Hiawatha, so they rescue the Hiawatha's remaining crew.
What a relief. Thought we were all gonna die.
It is revealed that Spock, yes Spock, has a deep connection to these 7 signals. Another signal appears and Discovery must use the spore drive to reach this new location. They discover a planet with a lost colony of humans, the descendants of people rescued from Earth's World War III period by a mysterious red angel. And conveniently, that population of humans is about to be wiped out. No worries, Discovery saves the day. Conveniently. Also, Ensign Tilly begins to see an imaginary person. Discovery's crew learns that Spock had himself committed, but then he escaped, and apparently committed several murders in the process. Ensign Tilly's imaginary friend is actually a denizen of the mycelial network, a parasite of sorts, and she is trying to send a strong message to Lieutenant Commander Paul Stamets. Meanwhile, on Kronos, Section 31 props up the leadership of Chancellor L'Rell in order to prevent a slide back into war with the Federation. While hot on Spock's trail, the Discovery is forced into an encounter with a very old, sentient planetoid. Yeah, you heard me right. There is much confusion, but eventually they work out that the planetoid wants to leave a legacy of information before it dies. During this encounter, Saru's death process is activated, but it turns out that this death process, Vahari, is actually a maturation process. The predator species of the Kelpians, the Baul, have apparently been lying to Saru's people about how long Kelpians live. During the encounter with the sentient planetoid, Ensign Tilly is kidnapped away into the mycelial network by May, her parasite. Discovery catches up with Spock's shuttle, only to find a Section 31 agent inside, none other than former Emperor Georgiou. Spock is missing still.
Quite the welcome, my dear.
The crew mounts a rescue mission for Ensign Tilly, who is in the mycelial network with her parasite friend May. Together, May and Tilly are trying to slay a monster.
What are you doing with your tiny finger?
During the rescue, they bump into Dr. Hugh Culber from Season 1. Apparently, Culber is the monster. Okay, that's weird. Culber and Tilly are both rescued. It's time to start a religion. Another mysterious signal directs Discovery to Saru's homeworld of Kaminar. During the investigation, Saru is unable to contain himself and confronts the Baul over the lies and subjugation of the Kelpian people. In a move to liberate the Kelpians, Discovery manages to anger the Baul, who attempt to wipe out the Kelpian race in a fit of genocide. But the Red Angel appears just in time to save the Kelpians. Discovery gets tangled up in a time distortion. In that distortion, Captain Pike and Ashfaq encounter one of Discovery's probes reconfigured to be an attack squid. That happens sometimes. Which means that some other entity in a future time period is caught up in the whole Red Angel business too. Meanwhile, Michael Burnham rescues Spock from his parents and then from Section 31, and the two of them are on their way to Talos 4? What? On Talos 4, the Talosians are able to help unscramble Spock's mind, and now Spock is able to help us understand that all life in the galaxy is threatened and that the Red Angel is trying to save us.
Season 2 has been much better than Season 1.
Season 2 has been very entertaining so far.
The balance has been better. I think that's the strongest way to describe it. The overall balance of story, of plot, of character, of the show's cinematography is better than season 1.
It looks really good. They're all very color coordinated. They use a lot of blue. I like that. It's a ship with lights in a lot of strange places. A lot of lens flares. Seems like that could kind of be difficult to deal with on a daily basis, but on the show it looks very futuristic and cool and space travel-y.
The episodes of season 2 are getting better sequentially within season 2, and they're much better than season 1 in many respects. And part of that is down to the fact that the characters have a little bit more time to breathe. Season 1 was a crazy plot train full of plots, and season 2 is still that, but there's more consideration for character moments. And as each episode progresses, right up until the most recent one, the characters are getting more and more time to react, to breathe, to be on screen, and have the consequences of actions, harm them, move them, push them. The cinematography of season 2, as it compares to season 1, is better. There's a lot of flying camera stuff happening, which, I do like some of that. There is a style present with the camera motion. I'd say probably 90% of the camera work and the lighting and the cinematography, it all looks really good. 5%, 10% of the time, the camera might be in motion when maybe there isn't a need for. Maybe the camera's driving the emotion instead of the performances are in some instances. And I'm talking specifically about like the occasional staff meeting where the camera is just spinning around the characters and trying to push the drama when really they're just having a conversation. An asterisk is that this is a highly subjective thing. What works as far as a camera situation in one emotional context, even if you take it to apply to the same emotion in a different context, doesn't necessarily work. And filmmakers will argue until the end of time about, what the camera's doing, what it should be doing. But for my tastes, they could slow down a bit. And that's something they've actually been doing. With the last 2 subsequent episodes, Light and Shadows, and if memory serves, they've slowed way down. Like the camera is still in motion, but giving characters enough time to let the performances move the scene instead of the camera. And, it is a fine subjective balance. No one's going to have the right answer. And for me, it's moving in the right direction.
What's my favorite visual so far from season 2? I really like Saru's quarters. I'm an occasional gardener, and one hard thing about being in space, I would think, would be being away from dirt and grass and things that grow. But Saru found a way to make it work. So I would like to live in a house covered in plants right now. In fact, I kind of do live in a house covered in plants.
I think that the performances are really, really good.
The performances are all very good.
Everybody is coming to the screen, even if they only have a slice of time or a few seconds, and they're selling us on whatever the character's feeling, and I think it's working really well. This is a world-class, cast. Doug Jones is absolutely killing it. The fact that you can see him emote in a giant latex suit says something about his skill level. Sonequa Martin Green, Anthony Rapp, Anson Mount, even the bridge crew, whose characters have been given more screen time this season, and they have the least amount of time, and even in those tiny seconds, you can see a lot of character emotion and stuff like that. That is all grand.
I'm also really impressed with Sonequa Martin Green, who is a fellow Alabamian, shout out, that her performance kind of keeps both aspects of her personality close at all times. She's got a very emotional and human vulnerability, and at the same time a Vulcan logic layer. And I think in almost every scene that she's in, you can see those two halves. And sometimes they come sequentially, like first she'll be emotional, then she'll apply logic to it, or sometimes the other way around. But even if the dialogue is not talking about her background growing up on Vulcan, her performance always has that identity in mind. And I think that's a really successful aspect of her performance.
I don't think there's anything to fault with the character performance, the actors' performances. I think it's all been fantastic. The great Spock tease of 2019 is over. Is this actor portraying Spock like the Spock we know? It's hard to tell. We need some more time with him. He's obviously doing a good job just, being on screen. Like, when the character's annoyed with Michael Burnham, you feel it. That is all the hallmarks of a good performance. But is he Spock? He should be and he shouldn't be. This is a younger Spock than we're used to, and that is a very fine line to balance, and we haven't, I personally don't think we've seen him on screen enough to see if the balance is working yet.
I think both of the actors playing Spock are doing a really nice job. I'm especially a fan of the hairstyles for Vulcan children. If you don't have straight hair, that must be really hard to maintain. But Spock has got the very, very severe haircut as a young man. The adult Spock's performance is also very good. Spock is kind of my favorite character in almost any Star Trek series, especially in the original series. I really liked Leonard Nimoy's performance, and so I was very prepared not to like new Spock. I thought that it worked pretty well, actually. I can admit that reluctantly, that even though there was a lot of teasing about when Spock was going to show up, and there was this quest to find his shuttle, and it just felt like Spock was always over the horizon, when we finally got to meet him, even though he was a little, scrambled, when he came back to himself, I thought his performance was very good. I am a big fan of Anson Mount's interpretation of Captain Pike. He does the thing that I really like for Star Trek captains to do, which is to be very personable and very warm. At the same time, he's very clear who's in charge. He inhabits his authority without lording it over other people, and he doesn't use it as a way to kind of throw his weight around. He's given me the Captain Picard feels. One of the things I really liked about Next Generation was that Picard ran a workplace that I would like to be part of, and I get that same feeling from Captain Pike, that he's a very competent leader, and he allows other people to also be competent and to sort of maximize their potential and to do what they're good at. And I think the character's written well, and I think Anson Mount's performance of that is also really effective. Yeah, so one of the smartest things that I think the writers are doing in season 2 of Discovery is letting Dr. Culber's resurrection have consequences and be sort of not a wholly good thing. And it's been really interesting to see the relationship between Culber and Paul Stamets now that Culber is back, because Stamets got what he wanted. He got the love of his life back in his, life, but it's not the same as it used to be. And Dr. Culber still remembers dying and coming back, and his body has been rebuilt, and it's all very strange to him. And I mean, of course it would be. Like, if you die and then you get rebuilt and you come back, that's gonna cause you some emotional distress of some kind. And so I think it's very smart for the show to kind of let that run in the background, because so much of what's been happening with the other characters has been happening really quickly. And even, Ash Tyler, who was not born a human, he was born a Klingon, and all his bones have been changed, and his extra heart got removed. That can't be easy to deal with. But he sort of bounced back from that very quickly, and now he's, with Section 31, and it's all cool. So it's nice to see the show takes some time with a traumatic experience that would, of course, take some time to process. This last episode, if memory serves, I thought that Anthony Rapp did a wonderful job, as he usually does, but expressing kind of the hope and the heartbreak of getting back the person that you love and then realizing that you don't get to just pick up where you left off. And I think the interactions between these two characters are really emotionally satisfying. So that's a way that I think season 2 has redeemed what seemed like a mistake in season 1. There was a lot of conversation about the kill your gaze and about how Dr. Culber was such a well-acted character who just disappeared for seemingly no reason. And now that he's come back, he has one of the most potentially interesting character arcs in the show.
The overall sci-fi-ness of the show is pretty good. This is a franchise where aliens are basically people in funny rubber masks. So the believability of that is pretty poor. But when we've seen alien situations in Discovery Season 2, the Baul come to mind. We got to see the Telosians again, and they are, they were exceptionally portrayed. The sentient planetoid, the Kelpians. Like, whenever there's a moment to put aliens on screen, even though those aliens are largely humanoid in nature, they have been more alien than Star Trek has often portrayed these things to be. And I think that the sci-fi-ness of that is pretty good. I mean, yeah, we're still relying on certain science fiction tropes like time travel, like propulsion through mushrooms. We've always given Star Trek a more leeway in this regard because the universe is already built in these things. And so we forgive Star Trek a lot for their trespasses against science,
Stamets is the constant, or his tardigrade DNA is the constant. I wonder why he doesn't have more arms, though, if he has tardigrade DNA. I wonder if he could survive in a vacuum now. There are a lot of unexplored implications to having tardigrade DNA, besides just being able to navigate through time.
I think Discovery is as sci-fi as Star Trek has always been. It's towing that line, as expected. Concerning the Red Angel, we have a much clearer picture of the Red Angel's agenda. We know that it is trying to save the galaxy, or the sentient life of the galaxy, from destruction in the future.
I think the agenda of the Red Angel does make a certain kind of sense, trying to repair a timeline.
Whatever entity represents the SQUID probe is obviously working to destroy sentient life in the galaxy, we've just learned. So the battle lines are kind of drawn, and that makes the Red Angel's agenda kind of clear. We know that it's kind of a good guy. Who is the Red Angel? We might have some theories as to that.
It's kind of like, we've seen timeline repair in some other shows. I mean, Doctor Who, all the time. 12 Monkeys works with this a little bit. It seems like, honestly, kind of a selfish thing to do to, change a timeline. It seems like you would need to have a really good reason for changing the timeline. And it to me, I often feel like the reasons for changing it are not good enough. Stopping a future wipeout of the Federation, I guess, is a pretty good reason. And I'm convinced, at least, that is the Red Angel's agenda, is to stop an unacceptable future. It's kind of also the goal of the Terminator franchise, is to keep Skynet from rising up. But honestly, I think that people who change the timeline are because it doesn't just affect one person. It doesn't just affect your grandma or your grandson or yourself in the case of that Ethan Hawke movie where he was his own grandma and his own grandpa. That is still a mind bender. But I just think that changing time, it's a really big commitment, and you really need a sense of responsibility to take on something like that.
We know that the Red Angel is a woman, per Spock's statements in the most recent episode, and we know that it's a human woman, So that narrows down our suspect list. It could be a future Michael Burnham trying to correct the timeline. It could be an associate that works with Jean-Luc Picard, a way of spinning off the new Picard series. Yeah, now that it's a lady of some sorts and a human lady, our suspect list no longer includes Sybok or even future Captain Pike. It's a shame it's not Sybok. Sybok is part of Spock's family. Where is Sybok? Is Georgiou the Red Angel? I can't say it isn't. There are a couple of possible contenders for who the identity of the SQUID probe people or entity is/are. It could be a proto-Borg situation. Not very strong. Most likely, and I think the show is pushing this really hard now, is that the SQUID probe is a manifestation of what's called control, which is the artificially intelligent leadership of Section 31. So at some point in the future, the leadership of Section 31, control, decides that wiping out the Federation is a thing it has to do. Is this a computer gone awry? Probably, You can minimize the risk to the Federation if there's no Federation. Totally a computer move. But it seems likely that this is what Season 2 is set up as the villain of the season, is control. And so that was the entity that sent the SQUID probe back. That is the entity that is infecting Arium, the cybernetic person on the Bridge of Discovery, that is also communicating with the contemporary control at Section 31. And I think that the villain of Season 2 is basically going to be the computer.
Someone's trying to control Z control. Wrap your mind around that.
Another thing that might be happening is that maybe Discovery Season 2 is setting up the temporal Cold War timeline from Enterprise, everyone's favorite timeline. Maybe these are the opening shots of that Cold War, manipulating the timeline in order to achieve a result. Maybe the SQUID probe entity, or the entity that sent the SQUID probe back, is actually the Sphere Builders. And we know the Sphere Builders are an enemy of the Federation in the future. The 500-year in the future time frame, the 27th century time frame, doesn't quite make that connection, but who knows? There have been some suggestions that there's a V'ger connection to this thing, that maybe whatever reprogrammed V'ger, Voyager 6 and sent it back to Earth as V'ger, the machine planet that we never get to see, is somehow responsible for the SQUID probe. And I'd have to say no. There's no other hints or pieces of evidence to suggest that. Just a reprogrammed probe sent back. I think that's a coincidence. But you never know. Discovery Season 2 is setting up the Section 31 spin-off series exactly as you see it. Captain Leland, former Emperor Georgiou, they are showing you the ship that's going to be involved, or ships, the dynamics of the leadership cast, and the subsequent, like Captain Georgiou and Captain Leland are sort of squabbling over control. Like Georgiou is sort of setting Leland up to fail. It's not the kind of rank and promotion that you'd see on a Starfleet vessel. There's sort of like a dog-eat-dog, sort of like a invisible hand capitalist competition kind of a thing with how that works, and maybe that's a component of the show that they're setting up. The biggest questions that might arise out of that come from Georgiou's character, and that is, does she have a heart? She obviously cares about Burnham, even though it's not her Burnham. That might be the only connection to family that she has. And maybe that's motivating her to help Burnham. She's claimed that she knows things about Burnham that Michael Burnham doesn't know about herself. That could be a result of digging around in Section 31 files. It could be a result of the USS Defiant's computer banks, which the Defiant comes from the future of where we currently are and landed in the past of the Mirror Universe. So, Emperor Georgiou would have maybe known what was in the contents of those files. about Michael Burnham specifically. You know, an even bigger question they could use to set up here is like, how much of a soul does Giorgio have? She's evil, she's conniving, you know. You set someone like that loose in the Section 31 organization and like, she's gonna climb to the top. She's already climbed to the top. Section 31's kind of doomed with her in it. In season 2 of Discovery, they might use that to explain how Section 31 goes underground by the time DS9 comes around. Characters had never heard of Section 31 by then, but characters seem familiar with Section 31 now, in the same way that we're familiar with the CIA now. But will Giorgio come around on the Federation? Will she see the value in that kind of an organization? That could be the heart of a Section 31 spin-off show, and it could be a question that they plant in season 2 of Discovery. Why is the Red Angel so obsessed with Spock and Michael Burnham? No clue. But clearly they are central to organizing the timeline as it is now. A Burnham-filled timeline is the Prime Universe timeline. So this correction sets up the Prime Universe that we know and love. Without Burnham, the whole thing falls apart. All sentient life in the galaxy is wiped out by possibly Control, an AI program gone awry. So something Burnham and Spock do or say or whatever is central. They haven't revealed, I can't even guess what that might be, but you know, they're crucial in defeating this Section 31 AI bot. One thing worth considering is that season 2 of Discovery might be setting up the PICARD series, the upcoming PICARD series on CBS All Access. We know that the SQUID probe comes from the 27th century, 500 years in the future. They gave that in dialogue. The only other thing that we know occurs in the 27th century within the Star Trek universe, within the Prime universe, is that a character called Caldano invents a superweapon, the Tosh Uthat, that he's so worried it could be so destructive, he could blow up entire stars and planets and such, that he hides it in time, back in time, the 22nd century, on the planet Risa. In the 24th century, Captain Picard, on a holiday, in the episode Captain's Holiday, prevents a scheme by 2 Vorgons to uncover this weapon and use it for their own ends, sell it, you know, destroy someone's planet, who knows. That's the only connection to the 27th century that we have, and that's kind of specific. 500 years in the future, 27th century, that's kind of specific. If they're looking to set up the Picard series through the Red Angel storyline, that could be one way of doing it. Another thing that Discovery Season 2, and even Season 1, in a way, is talking about are the preservers from the original series episode, The Paradise Syndrome. And the Baul obelisks that exists in the Kelpian villages are the same obelisk, just turned upside down. That's not a coincidence. You know, the production team didn't design the same obelisk by accident. There's something going on there. Is it actually the preservers? Do the Baul become the preservers? Do they co-opt preserver technology? I don't know. But not only is the production design on those 2 obelisks the same, but they showed us a preserver obelisk way back in the season 1 episode Context is for Kings, when Michael Burnham is in the Spore Drive room that Stamets operates from, and Captain Lorca is showing her all the different places she can go to. One of the spots happened to have a preserver obelisk in it, so somebody has been thinking about the preservers since the beginning of season 1. And maybe there's a connection to the Baul. We don't really talk about a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff because it's really hard to suss those things out in the moment. You know, the production team isn't sharing those kinds of dramatic details with us. But Discovery has changed showrunners a couple of times now. The first showrunner, Fuller, left. A pair of showrunners left after that, and Kurtzman's running it now, and they've just added a new showrunner, Michelle Paradise. It's not unheard of for a Star Trek production to have a tumultuous backstory like that. The original series had a real famous issue with Roddenberry and crew leaving the show in the 3rd season. The Next Generation had a real tumultuous first season behind the scenes, and maybe there's some stuff like this happening too. But Discovery Season 2 has been really strong. It's been moving, it's been getting better episode by episode. I think the show is finding its footing. If this is a result of the change in leadership, good. If this new person, Michelle Paradise, is responsible for the last couple of episodes in particular, even better, because she was made a producer of some sort for 3 episodes and then is going to become a showrunner after that. And apparently this is based on her competency and her knowledge of Star Trek stuff. So, you know, it's got to be better than what's been happening before in terms of behind the scenes. So we'll just wait and see.
Thank you for watching our quick and dirty mid-season review. Your reward is 50 points for putting up with this. If you'd like to see more Trexpertise in the multiverse, then consider chipping in to support the channel. Help us hire a second editor and double the channel's output. You can do this by supporting us over on Patreon. At only $1 to $2 per month, you can help us greatly increase the quality and quantity of Trexpertise. Link in the subspace below. If you'd like more commentary and reviews on Discovery, we will be making an end-of-season review video at the conclusion of Season 2. Keep your eyes peeled for that. In the meantime, join us on Twitter under this handle for immediate post-Discovery conversation, and then a couple of days later over on Medium under this handle for a full review and analysis. Speaking of analysis and theorizing, if you want more of this theory that Discovery exists in an alternate timeline, then check out the Kuran Kowalski theory over on the Kowalski channel. His video on the subject is right here. Take a look. It has some delicious speculation. As always, subscribe, turn on notifications, or sign up for our no-nonsense email list if you'd like to be notified when the next video is uploaded. Next up is a nice, delicious slice of video essay. Thanks, and see you soon.
遠い将来を考えてみようよ。